I was sitting at my kitchen table, scrolling through my phone, when I saw the post that would change everything. My own face, circled in bright red like a warning sign, stared back at me from my daughter-in-law's TikTok. The caption above it read, "If you could erase one person from your family, who would it be?" And there I was the chosen target. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My name is Helen Carter. I am 68 years old, a retired librarian, and I never thought I'd see the day my family became online entertainment. But there it was, hundreds of comments rolling in, laughing emojis, cruel jokes, strangers calling me extra baggage. Every word felt like a slap. Someone even wrote, "The old lady doesn't fit the aesthetic." I stared at the screen, stunned, until the pain turned into something else, clarity. So I typed my reply, hands trembling but steady enough to hit send. "The house you live in isn't your husband's. It's mine." It took only a few seconds for the comment to explode with reactions. Some people laughed, others asked if I was serious. I was, dead serious. That night I drove to the house everyone believed belonged to my son, David, and his wife, Lily. I sat in my car across the street, watching the warm light glowing through the living room window. It looked cozy, welcoming, full of life, and yet I knew, deep down, that everything inside had been built on a quiet lie. The truth was simple. That house was mine. Bought with my late husband's inheritance, paid in full 12 years ago. I had allowed them to live there, believing it was a gift of love, a foundation for their future. But now, as I stared through the windshield, I realized something painful. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped being part of that picture. I wasn't Helen, the mother who cooked Sunday dinners or watched the grandkids when they were sick. I had become the outsider, the one circled in red. And as I sat there, the glow of their home reflecting in my eyes, I made a quiet promise to myself. This time I wouldn't stay silent. Not again. Not after being erased in front of the whole world. 12 years earlier, things looked very different. Back then, my husband Frank was still alive, and our son David had just married Lily, a bright young woman with ambitious plans and expensive taste. They were living in a cramped apartment on the edge of Atlanta, barely making ends meet. David worked long hours at an accounting firm while Lily was studying for her real estate license. They had dreams of owning a home, but dreams cost money, and money was the one thing they didn't have. I still remember the evening David confessed their struggles. We were sitting around the dinner table, the smell of roasted chicken in the air, when he sighed and said, "Mom, the market's crazy. We can't afford anything decent. We don't even qualify for a loan." Frank reached across the table, giving me that knowing look husbands give when they already know what you're thinking. Later that night, as we cleaned the kitchen together, he said quietly, "We could help them, you know. Maybe a down payment." But I shook my head. A down payment still leaves them buried in debt. We could do something better. We could buy the house outright, let them pay small rent until they're ready to take over. Frank studied me for a long moment, then smiled. "That's why I married you, Helen. You think ahead." A month later, we found it the perfect house. 4 bedrooms, a big backyard, and a wraparound porch that reminded me of summer evenings when David was little. It was everything I'd imagined for him and more. We bought it in cash, and because Frank and I had always been cautious with legal matters, I put the deed in my name alone. "Just as a safety net," I explained. "You never know what life brings." David and Lily were ecstatic. They moved in within weeks, calling it their forever home. At first they paid a modest rent, barely enough to cover property taxes. But after Frank passed away, I told David not to worry about the payments anymore. "Your family," I said. "Keep the money for the kids." It felt right at the time. I was proud to see my son thriving, his family growing. I didn't care about credit or ownership, love was enough. Or so I thought. Because somewhere along the line, Lily's story began to change. First, I became David's mother who helped them with the house. Then it turned into David's mother who lent them money. And eventually people started believing David had bought the house himself with a little help. I let it slide. After all, what harm could a little pride do? I would soon learn the answer, more than I ever imagined. 2 days after that post went viral, my neighbor Carol showed up at my door, holding her phone like it was evidence in a crime. "Helen, honey, you need to see this," she said. I already knew what she meant. The whole neighborhood had seen it. My face circled in red, my name dragged through digital mud. I took the phone anyway. There it was, the photo I'd smiled for, the one Lily had insisted we take to celebrate family. Underneath it, her caption mocked me, "Family game night. If you could erase one person, who would it be?" She'd even added a laughing emoji, as if publicly humiliating her husband's mother was something to giggle about. The comments hurt more than I expected. Strangers writing things like the old lady doesn't belong or send her to a nursing home. One person typed, "She looks like she judges everyone," and Lily replied with 3 laughing faces. I could almost hear her voice sweet and fake the way she used to say, "Oh, Helen, you worry too much," when I questioned her spending. I sat down hard on the couch, my heart pounding. The woman I'd welcomed into my family had turned my existence into a joke. I thought about the countless times I'd been there for her, helping with the kids, paying for her real estate classes, covering emergencies when David's car broke down. I'd done all of it quietly, never expecting gratitude, just family respect. When my phone rang that night and David's name appeared, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he was calling to defend me, to demand she take it down. But his voice was tight and tired. "Mom, Lily showed me your comment. That was completely inappropriate." I gripped the phone. "Inappropriate. David, she posted a picture of me and asked people to erase me from the family." He sighed. "It was just a joke. You know how social media is. But claiming the house is yours, that was crossing a line." I sat there in silence, realizing for the first time how far I'd fallen in his eyes. He wasn't defending me. He was protecting her. When the call ended, I didn't cry. I just felt something inside me go still, like a door quietly closing. Maybe that was the moment I stopped being the forgiving mother and started becoming the woman ready to take her life back. The next evening, I did something I hadn't done in 5 years. I drove to the house I had bought, the one they called theirs. I parked in the same driveway where Frank and I had once stood proudly, handing David the keys for the first time. Back then, I'd imagined birthday parties, family dinners, laughter echoing through those walls. Now, I felt like a stranger approaching enemy territory. I unlocked the front door with the key I'd never returned. The sound of the latch clicking open startled even me. Inside, everything smelled different. The warm, cozy scent of home had been replaced by something sharp, like expensive candles and new paint. They had remodeled. The living room furniture was modern, the color palette sleek and cold. There were no traces of the life Frank and I had imagined for this place. From the kitchen came Lily's voice, sharp and startled. "Helen, what are you doing here?" I stepped forward, calm but firm. "I live here," I said simply. "Or have you forgotten whose name is on the deed?" Her eyes widened and her hand froze halfway to her phone. "You can't just walk in here. This is our home." David appeared from the hallway, his face flushed. "Mom, what are you doing? You can't just show up like this." I looked at my son, the boy I'd once held through sleepless nights. "Actually, I can. This house belongs to me. I'm the legal owner." Lily crossed her arms, laughing nervously. "Fine, you want to play legal games. We've lived here for 12 years. We've renovated, maintained, paid for everything. You can't just take it back." I met her gaze evenly. "My lawyer disagrees. Since there's no lease and you've never paid rent consistently, you're considered guests. I can ask you to leave with 30 days' notice." Her confidence flickered just for a second. David's tone softened, but his words stung. "Mom, please, let's not make this worse. I'll talk to Lily. Maybe we can work something out." I shook my head. "There's nothing to work out, David. I've been more than patient. But it seems generosity only makes people forget boundaries." Lily's mask finally cracked. "You bitter old woman. You just can't stand that this is our life now." I looked around the house one last time and whispered, "No, Lily, you built your life on mine. And it's time you remembered that." When I closed the door behind me that night, I felt the shift deep in my bones. The balance of power had changed, and for once, it was tilting back to where it belonged. The morning after that confrontation, I called Raymond Collins, the lawyer who had handled Frank's estate. His voice, calm and steady, reminded me of my late husband's. "Helen," he said, "you're well within your rights. But I'd advise you to gather your paperwork and look carefully through your finances. If they're willing to twist the truth about ownership, there might be more beneath the surface." So I did exactly that. I pulled out years of bank statements, credit card records, and receipts. I expected nothing unusual. What I found instead made my stomach twist. Small charges, $30 here, $50 there, spread across months. Streaming services I'd never heard of. Makeup subscriptions. A purchase from a high-end boutique in Buckhead that I knew Lily loved. At first, I thought it was an honest mistake. Maybe I'd left my card on an old online account. But as I cross-checked the charges, a pattern appeared. The shipping addresses matched theirs. The payments linked back to Lily's email. She had been using my credit card for at least 2 years. I added up the totals. More than $8,000. Not enough to alert the bank, but plenty to fund a luxury lifestyle she couldn't afford. Spa treatments, handbags, dinners out, all paid for by me. I sat at my dining table, surrounded by receipts, anger building in slow, controlled waves. This wasn't just carelessness. This was theft. And the worst part, I had trusted her completely. That evening, my phone rang. Lily. I almost laughed at the timing. "Helen, I think we need to talk," she began, her voice unusually soft. "David and I have discussed everything, and we want to make things right. We're willing to start paying rent fair market value starting this month." I looked at the evidence spread across my table. "That's generous," I said quietly. "And how exactly do you plan to pay rent, Lily? You've only sold 3 homes in 2 years? David makes $60,000 a year. Where's the extra money coming from?" There was silence, then a shaky exhale. "I don't know what you're implying." "Oh, I think you do. My credit card has been charged nearly $8,000 in the last 2 years for things I never bought. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" The silence stretched so long I could hear her breathing on the other end. "I can explain," she whispered finally. "I'm sure you can," I said, and hung up. That night, I felt something shift inside me, not anger, clarity. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one being taken advantage of. I was the one holding the evidence, and I knew exactly what to do next. 2 days later, I heard a soft knock at my apartment door. When I opened it, my granddaughter Emma stood there, her eyes red and puffy, holding a phone in her trembling hands. "Grandma," she said, "can I come in?" I made her a cup of hot chocolate the same way I used to when she was little. She sat at the kitchen table, twisting her hair around her finger, clearly fighting back tears. "Mom's been lying," she said finally. "About a lot of things." My heart sank. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" She unlocked her phone and slid it across the table. "I heard her talking on the phone last night with Aunt Karen. She said you found out about the credit cards. She's not sorry, Grandma. She's mad you caught her." And Emma hesitated, swallowing hard. "She said you're too old to fight back, that once Dad files the papers you'll lose everything anyway." I felt the air leave my lungs. "Files what papers?" Emma scrolled to a screenshot text messages between Lily and her sister. My eyes moved across the words slowly, each one cutting deeper than the last. "Time to show Helen where she stands in this family. David's too soft. Once this is over, the house will be ours legally." There it was, their plan. The social media post hadn't been a joke at all. It was the first step in a calculated attack meant to humiliate me into backing off. Emma looked at me with watery eyes. "She's been telling everyone you're charging us rent because you're desperate for money, that you want to kick us out so you can sell the house." I took her hands gently. "Emma, none of that is true, and I need you to know, no matter what happens, I love you and Josh. None of this is your fault." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I know, Grandma, but I also know what's right and what's wrong. And what Mom did to you, it's wrong." That moment I realized something powerful. This fight wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about truth. About showing my grandchildren that integrity isn't something you inherit, it's something you choose. When Emma left that afternoon, she hugged me tighter than she ever had before. And as the door closed behind her, I looked at my reflection in the window. I wasn't the erased woman from a social media post anymore. I was a grandmother ready to fight for what mattered most. The next morning, my lawyer, Raymond Collins, called with a voice that was steady but serious. "Helen, your son just filed for what's called adverse possession." I frowned. "Adverse what?" "It's a legal claim," he explained, saying that since they've lived in your house for 12 years and made improvements, they have rights to ownership. It's rare, but they're trying to use it as leverage. My chest tightened. "Can they really take my house?" "Not here," Raymond said firmly. "The law requires 20 years and they've only been there 12. But this tells us something important, Helen. They're not just bluffing. They're desperate." That desperation soon made sense. Raymond and a forensic accountant named Patricia Wells began digging deeper into David and Lily's finances. What they uncovered left me speechless. For months, Lily and David had been using the property as collateral for loans 3 separate times, adding up to more than $230,000. All of it approved with forged signatures. My forged signatures. They had created LLC called Carter Property Group to make it look legitimate. Patricia spread the documents across the table in Raymond's office, her tone calm but razor sharp. They funneled the money through this business, paid off personal debts, hired an expensive attorney, and even bought a condo in Florida 8 months ago for $180,000 cash. I stared at her, feeling my stomach drop. They used my house to buy a vacation home? Raymond nodded slowly. And that's not all. We also found unauthorized withdrawals $40,000 from your son's trust fund, the one Frank set up before he passed. I sat back, my throat dry. David had a trust fund. Yes, Raymond said gently. You're listed as the administrator. But someone used his power of attorney to access it. My guess it was Lily. The room went quiet. The betrayal wasn't just financial anymore, it was moral, personal, and deliberate. I thought about David, my sweet boy who once built me a birdhouse for Mother's Day, now signing documents behind my back. Raymond leaned forward. We can press charges right now: bank fraud, forgery, identity theft. Or we give them one last chance to make it right. I looked down at the deed lying between us. My name printed in neat black ink. The name Lily had tried to erase. No, I said finally. I don't want revenge. I want the truth to have weight again. Let's give them a choice: restitution or prison, and this time they'll see I mean every word. The following morning, Raymond's office smelled faintly of coffee and fresh paper. I sat across from him, waiting, my hands steady for the first time in weeks. David and Lily walked in looking polished and confident, as if they were there to negotiate a business deal instead of confront the wreckage they'd created. Mom, David began, forcing a smile, I hope this means you've calmed down. I have, I replied evenly, completely. Raymond opened a folder and began laying out the documents one by one: loan applications, credit card statements, fake signatures, bank transfers, all in neat chronological order. The color drained from David's face. Lily's jaw tightened, her fingers gripping her designer purse, until her knuckles turned white. This is absurd, she said sharply. You're twisting everything. We were protecting family assets. Raymond didn't flinch. By committing federal crimes, forging deeds, laundering funds through an LLC, and stealing from a trust. David tried to interrupt, but I stopped him. Don't lie, David. Not again. The evidence is right here. You forged my name and used my home to borrow money. You let her use my credit card like a personal wallet. You both betrayed the one person who would have given you everything if you'd only asked. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then David's voice cracked. I never meant for it to go this far, Mom. Lily said it was temporary. She said you wouldn't understand. Lily glared at him. You think throwing me under the bus will save you? Raymond slid a final paper across the table. Miss Carter is willing to avoid criminal prosecution on one condition: full restitution of all stolen funds, immediate vacating of the property, and cooperation in reversing every fraudulent loan. If you refuse, we file federal charges this afternoon. David stared at the paper, defeated. How long do we have? Until 5 o'clock, Raymond said. They left without another word. At 4:37, my phone rang. David's voice was small, the fight gone. We'll sign everything, Mom? 3 weeks later, I stood in my kitchen again, my kitchen pouring coffee as the morning sun filtered through the windows. The air felt different now, lighter, honest. The fraudulent loans were erased, the condo sold, the trust fund restored. Emma visited that afternoon, carrying a small box of books she'd forgotten. It feels peaceful here, she said softly. It is, I told her, for the first time in a long while. When she hugged me goodbye, I thought about the price of that peace. It had cost me years of silence, and one long battle for truth. That evening I sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky gold. I posted a single message on social media, beneath an old photo of Frank and me. Peace isn't what happens when conflict ends. It's what happens when justice begins. Within minutes, messages of love and support flooded in, but one comment stood out, the one from Emma. Love you, Grandma. Thank you for showing us that doing what's right will always matter more than keeping the peace. I smiled, closed the app, and sipped my tea. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was full of something I hadn't felt in years: dignity, peace, and truth.